welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
and I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
gentle uncles.
I mean, I'm sometimes gentle, but if you like it rough, I can be that too.
Come in like a lion and out like a lamb, and
More
I
like
don't
a
know where I'm going
cow.
with this.
I'm actually kind of like a cow.
a cow and a platypus,
Yeah, exactly.
which is my favorite Aesop fable.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful one.
The cow that stepped on the platypus, the end. So
and
here
that's
we
why
are.
their tails look like that.
That's right. That's why they're part beaver, part duck, and in the middle part's a mystery.
Yep.
Hey, it's episode 172.
Yep.
That number in numerology means your uncle is going to get better.
God, I hope so. And it's a fun show. Remarkably low body count, which is kind of weird for us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about spreading your seed around.
Yep. That's always great. I'm going to sing a hymn, Elder.
Yep.
And then I'm going to close the book on the book of Joshua, hopefully forever.
Thank God.
Yeah. You never have to read that again. How does that feel?
That every silver lining has a cloud, but I'll take it.
You didn't have to read it the first time. Nobody asked you to.
But it's a service we do for the people,
Yes, indeed.
for the podcast listeners. So don't forget, we're out there we're on the YouTube, all the different things, all the pod blasters. Find what you like, throw out the rest, and with that, let's do a show.
Let's do it.
Hey, Uncle Doug.
Hello, Uncle Dan.
Listen, we, as our listeners know, if there's one thing you can say about our show, it is that we are scientific geniuses.
Absolutely.
We have uncovered such scientific truths as Lemuria and Atlantis. I think maybe
We haven't done Atlantis yet, but we did do tuning fork woo.
Tuning
That's
forks.
true.
Yep.
So
there are more PhDs on this show than there are in all of Trump University.
In that there are none.
Right, yes.
Right. Except Jill Biden, who must not ever use that title because gross.
Do any of us actually have a degree?
I do.
Doug does. Okay. Oh, Doug. That's cute.
My husband gives me the third degree every time I come home with someone else's perfume on. Perfume.
Lipstick on your collar.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, Lord. So, Uncle Mark, are you going to impart some science on us?
Yeah, so let's as always, a little disclaimer up front. I am not a real science talking guy. I am an art school dropout who ran away and joined the movie circus. But, science is one of my interests, and I wouldn't go so far as to say hobby, but I do pay attention to it, and every once in a while I go, fuck. And this is kind of one of those moments. So let me guide you into it. So, fellas, last week we had some fun and some laughs at the expense of some of the UFO cultists before wrapping around and realizing that there is a north of zero chance that not only are we not alone in the galaxy, but also that visitors from beyond may already know about our noisy little planet and all our goings-on here. And, north of zero. So yeah. I forgot to mention that in that Washington Post article I cited discussing some potentially unnerving evidence of this, it also quoted an interview of almost former President Donald Trump by distinguished journalist Donald Trump Jr., in which Sr. claimed to know some very interesting things about the UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, which instantly disproves the government knows anything about UFOs at all, because if they told Trump anything about it, he would have tweeted it all out 15 seconds later, sold it to Putin.
Right.
Like he does everything else, right?
Or at very least, we have enough smart people in the government who were able to keep it from him.
Right. He never made it to Area 51, probably, because they don't have a golf course.
Well, yeah, I mean, they could just fly him around in a circle 3 times and land him in the same place and tell him it was Area 51,
Yeah,
and that'd be
doesn't
fine.
fucking know. But for serious, whether they were kooks or not, what those UFO cultists were doing was not only searching for the meaning of life, but like every other religious movement ever, and obviously science, they were reaching to understand life's origins.
Get laid. Oh, right.
Exactly.
Reaching the origins, right.
And I think that's something the vast majority of our listeners, the majority of the skeptical podverse, is also looking to do. Is to understand the origins of life.
Sure.
So now every culture has an origin story of human beginnings, a creation myth, if you will. The one in the Christian world, of course, where we 3 live, sadly or otherwise, is that about 6,000 years ago, a very powerful God set a calendar week aside to make the universe and everything in it, including people, which he first did by blowing into mud nostrils and then inexplicably did a do-over a few short lines later when he made a guy, then tore his rib out to make a rib lady to be his friend, to have sex with, even though she was genetically his twin. Most other culture...
More of a clone, really.
A clone, which is kind of a twin, isn't it?
I don't know.
Same genes,
different.
Same everything. But most other cultures' creation myths, however, are stupid and unbelievable by comparison. So,
Right.
But again, they're all trying to answer the gnawing question, where did we come from? And I, for one, am willing to listen to any reasonable explanation. And just an aside, you guys know that oddly, we haven't really made a specific column in our spreadsheet for creation myths, which is kind of an oversight, I think, because some of them are really fantastic. There's a lot of really fun. I started looking into the Navajo creation myth at one point, and my brain started bleeding. It was so complicated. I'm like, yeah. So maybe we'll have a Navajo on to talk about that sometime. But anyway, let's resolve to change that and do that in the future.
Yeah.
Now, on the scientific side of the ledger, the search for answers to this big one rolls on. Abiogenesis, broadly, is what we call the beginnings of life on Earth, or how we think maybe life formed from organic compounds in a rather shockingly fast order after the formation of the Earth. The earliest microfossils found so far are almost 4 billion years old, a short 500 million years after the formation and cooling of the planet. And there are bacterial colony fossils called stromatolites from 3.5 billion years old that are more complex. 3.5 billion years ago in the fossil record that are more complex. And those fossils are evidence of replicating organisms that used RNA, the precursor to DNA. And what is likely to save us from the virus, by the way, RNA research.
Yeah.
Meaning they have been evolving for quite some time prior to their evidence in the strata. So I know 500 million years is a long time, but to me that's pretty fucking amazing that life started its struggle that quickly after this thing, formed into a big space booger of rock and lava. So it's not just the anti-scientific minds of Orthodox religion and the religion-averse minds of science that have struggled with this, perhaps the greatest question. Science fiction has taken a few stabs at the question as well. Most cogently to our discussion, a really excellent film called The First 30 Minutes of Prometheus started off with what looked clearly like a primordial Earth being visited by a humanoid being who was even paler than Doug, who ingests a cup of glop that dissolves him into molecules, and as we follow his disintegration into the waterfall, we see strands of DNA in the roiling waters. Thus, he has seeded the inert Earth with the building blocks of life.
Fun.
Yeah. Why he couldn't just, jerk off into the waterfall, I don't know. He just had to dissolve, but there you go. It's a priesthood.
I'm melting. Oh.
Other stories have explored this idea, including, for Doug here, Season 6, Episode 20 of Star Trek The Next Generation, titled The Chase, where Captain Picard discovers that all humanoid life, human, Vulcan, Romulan, and yes, even Klingon, is related. This is the concept of panspermia. In scientific and theoretical terms, the idea that life on Earth may not have started here, but rather traveled here by coincidence or otherwise from outside our little planet. Now, while that's a really cool narrative for speculative fiction, it's a pretty absurd concept, right, guys? I mean, no one in their right mind would believe that kind of moonshine, but Well, that's what I thought too. But I started poking around, and it turns
you'll
out...
notice that neither of us responded to that. We see your tricks coming, my friend.
I have just so many tricks in my witch bag. But while the theory of life spreading between planets or even across the galaxy is a bit of a minority position among legit scientists, there are legit scientists that believe, some of them strongly, that it may be a provable hypothesis. The idea has been around in one form or another as far back as ancient Greece. It reemerged as a kind of serious theory in the early 20th century, but picked up steam when in the 70s when legit scientists Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe, sorry, I murdered that name, proposed that space was littered with organic particles and that they rained down on Earth constantly. They were later proved correct. The idea is that tiny molecules are pushed through space, and tiny little organic molecules and compounds are pushed through space by radiation pressure, potentially traveling hundreds of millions of miles in the 10 billion years since the Big Bang. This idea is called radiopanspermia. In 2009, Stephen Hawking, who we mentioned last week, declared it very possible that life has been transmitted through space from planet to planet from high-energy impacts on life-rich planets, jettisoning organism-bearing rock as meteors that travel through space to other planets at high speeds. This is called lithopanspermia, so being transported by rocks, right? But the question is then, how can organisms live in the freezing, highly radioactive vacuum of space? Pretty well, it turns out. Experiments by NASA and the Japanese and European space agencies have shown that with even a tiny bit of dust or soot shielding, some bacteria can survive for years in the vacuum of space, or if shrouded enough by rock, indefinitely.
Wow.
In 2019, scientists discovered ribose, a sugar molecule, in a meteorite. And that's an excellent building block for life.
Interesting.
So, for real scientists and professor of genetics at the Harvard Medical School, Gary Ruvkin, very consciously wanders right up to the edge of the creationist argument while totally rejecting it by arguing that 3.5 billion-year-old bacterial stromatolite fossils are too complex given the short amount of time from planetary cooling to whatever mechanisms brought about their abiogenesis. He specifically points to something called the ATP synthase. And that's the same little wonder creationists often cite to argue the same thing as Ruvkin, but from a God-made-it position.
Right.
Again, I'm not the best science-talking guy, but apparently this is a little rotary mechanism that moves so quickly and is so elegantly efficient, Ruvkin argues it needed more time to develop than the considerably less than 500 million years it would have had on a cooling Earth. He suggests its evolution began much, much longer ago than 4 billion years someplace else. So apparently NASA has this cool thing they call the Decadal Survey. So every 10 years they speak to all the leading astrophysicists and astronomers and planetologists in the world and ask what the priorities of the next 10 years ought to be. And looking for life on other planets always ends up being the top priority.
Interesting.
So it seems Ruvkin, who is a real scientist, and planetary scientist Maria Zuber have convinced NASA to include a small DNA sequencer on its next probe to Mars in order to see if we can find proof of distant cousins on our nearest neighbor. Since the Curiosity rover has twice discovered methane there, a very promising sign of bacterial life, having the ability to detect microorganisms and see of what sort they are seems like a no-brainer. But if, as Ruvkin says, we see a similar method of replication as the RNA or DNA that is the coding for life on Earth, boom, panspermia seems pretty close to being a real thing. So that would be kind of an earth-shattering thing to wrap our heads around, would it not?
I mean, yeah, it'd be weird. What's funny is that it doesn't change our theory of life. It just moves it, changes the location.
That's exactly right. And that's what a lot of these scientists say is it's like we aren't really solving the problem of abiogenesis. We're just moving it.
Yeah.
But it's still fascinating. It would be the...
That's true.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
As staggering as that might be to find that stuff on Mars, that's just potential transmission from one close planet to another. That's basically conjoined twins on the galactic scale. And it would prove one of four things: that two similar forms of life arose coincidentally on two separate planets, which seems fairly unlikely, that life somehow migrated from Earth to Mars, that life migrated from Mars to Earth, or that both were seeded with bacterial life already in progress from somewhere else. And the minority of scientists who support panspermia seem to lean on a much, much bigger story. In November of 2017, the first known, emphasis known, interstellar visitor to our solar system, but in no way the first ever, called Oumuamua, passed at a pretty fast clip through our solar system. It's Hawaiian for scout because it was discovered by the people at the observatory in Hawaii. Yeah. And some speculate this elongated, very strange object was a spacecraft. Scientists, however, that got a closer look assure us that it's a natural object of some kind.
Sure it is.
But yeah, it's a weird shape. But at its speed, even if it's been traveling for only 20 to 40 million years, it could have come from light years away. And as I said, it surely cannot be the first such visitor, given the billions of years before there was anybody to take note of such things, right?
Right.
The larger theory of panspermia holds that the same building blocks of life, or even early microorganisms, may have been seeded across the galaxy. And that brings us back to the Prometheus idea, which is basically called by the scientific community directed panspermia, meaning someone somewhere way the fuck out there is essentially trying to colonize the universe, but rather than with little green men in helmets with ray guns, they're playing the long fucking game. They're throwing bottles full of microbes into an infinite ocean, hoping a few can survive the journey, the planetary reentry, the impact, and whatever the conditions on the ground are, and hoping a fistful of germs can turn into something more over unimaginable spans of time. For what purpose? Who can say? So I watched a lecture by another legitimate scientist, Robert Zerbin, who thinks directed panspermia is a real possibility, as did Nobel Prize winner and co-discoverer of DNA, Francis Crick. Furthermore,
yeah, again, to what end? That's so weird to me.
Like, well, it's a big question, isn't it? Like, so furthermore, Zerbin thinks that because we ourselves as humans are now capable of it, that we should do it.
Oh really? My God.
Yeah. That
sounds terrible.
That we should send out shielded payloads of bacteria to our closest neighbors. And again, playing the long game, even further out into that infinite ocean, hoping one day, likely after we're long gone, something like our ancient cousins will crawl along the surface of a world we'll never know. And I think there are huge ethical considerations around such an idea.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to consider nonetheless. And Zerbin ends his lecture with a pretty concise little coda. He says, "Only parents have children." So that's the silly but also amazing and freaky and also very remotely possible idea of panspermia, guys.
That's crazy.
Look, the whole point of like evolutionary theory, even if it came from somewhere in outer space, is that at some point a child happened without a parent. Like, yes. Literally everybody has to concede that. So I quibble with everything. I'm quibbling.
See, I thought it was just fodder for science fiction and UFO kooks.
Right.
So as I was reading for last week's segment and started seeing that there were these truly legit scientists who have gone so far as to convince NASA to send a DNA sequencer to Mars that believe this is a possibility. I was like, shit, that's kind of crazy.
I have no problem believing that there's life elsewhere. Or at least
the Drake
in the
equation and the Fermi paradox address that, right?
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible, but it is interesting. I watched this great documentary on the Cassini probe. Maybe it was a Nova or something, and it's just fantastic. It gave us so much science and so many images. I think it was Saturn, right? I think Cassini was Saturn based. And when it finally had kind of gone well past its service date, so they decided to intentionally crash it, right?
Right.
And they were very, very careful to make sure that it went at a particular angle into the atmosphere of Saturn so it would be completely destroyed up by entering it. rather than coming in contact with one of Saturn's moons where there may be some kind of life. Because they very intentionally were like, we don't want to expose, there could be a surviving microbe from Earth on that thing.
Yeah, and they had to that probe had a probe of its own, if you remember that. That dropped onto Titan,
one of the moons. Yeah.
And the what they had to do to clean that to their satisfaction was pretty intense. Even then, they were very afraid that, like, no matter what you do, these microbes are so hardy.
Right, and I found in my reading that NASA has discovered there are some strains that their protocols don't kill.
Right.
The tardigrades.
Well, and tardigrades that's one of the things people are talking about shooting out into space.
Yeah, well,
for human panspermia. So
all I can say is I hold with Monty Python and I say, pray that there's intelligent life somewhere out in space because there's bugger all down here on Earth.
Fuck all here on Earth. So anyway, panspermia. It's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I love the idea of basically sending plague blankets out to the universe, but that's me.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
Like there's already life going on some planet. And we just send this fucking virus there. You're welcome.
Here, have one of these. We don't know what it'll do.
You don't know who we are. We don't know what this will do. Good luck.
I think we might be the villains.
Yeah, we're the baddie. We're the space baddies.
Yeah, there you go. All right, moving on.
Uncle Mark.
Yes.
As is stated at the beginning of this show, this show is meant to help people stepping out into a larger, better world.
Yes.
And leaving elements of religion behind. And there are many things that I miss more and many things that I miss less. But one I probably miss the most.
And I shall list them all in order now.
And here we go.
Yeah.
One I probably missed the least was the music.
I am going to agree with you there. I was not a lover of the music of the soundtrack to Mormonism. In my opinion, is a dismal one.
Yeah, and we don't get any of the great Southern Baptist revivalist fun stuff.
It's an organ grinder without the payoff of a monkey. Yeah.
Oh boy.
But Dan, I know you enjoyed some of the Mormon music.
I'll say this. It's funny because you guys when. On further inspection of the music itself, you guys are more correct than I am. And we can get into that.
I mean, that's just kind of a blanket statement.
I am going to be talking
to music here. Yeah,
I am going to be talking about church music here.
Yeah,
and one of the things that I discovered as I was researching this is that I went to different websites that aren't Mormon, that just talk about like Christian music or whatever, and I would find these. Recordings of church music, and I'd be like, and every now and then I'd play a recording, and it would be of a hymn that we did in Mormon church, because some of them are some of Mormon
older
hymns
Christian hymns, right?
Are just older Christian hymns.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, whoa, you guys are going way too fast with that. And then I just went, at some point I just went, oh, fuck. No, of course we went too slow.
We were the baddies.
It's fucking Mormonism. Yeah. Of course everything was way too slow. You got to
slow it down for Mormonism, baby.
But, I wasn't raised on the kids' rock and roll. I was raised on like opera and classical stuff. So so I think I had a higher tolerance.
Was pop music excluded from your youth?
It was not purposefully. Oh. It's just that my parents were both like really old when they had me, and that's what they loved.
They had that kind of taste, yeah.
Yeah. So they weren't into all of these young people with their Elvis and their Beatles or whatever.
And the Ink Spots and the Weavers.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, I don't know. So yes, I love music. Specifically, I actually really enjoy making music. And I love singing, especially love singing in harmony with other people.
We've seen you sing on stage, and you can carry a tune.
I'm not bad. I'm not terrible. But singing with people feels awesome. And it sounds good, and I almost never get to do it anymore. Sure, pre-COVID, there were the occasional karaoke moments, and as you mentioned, I am a stage performer, so every now and then people actually pay to hear me sing. And then, unlike you, probably learn not to repeat that mistake. But
well, I know where this is going. I'm ready. Islands in the Stream. Do you want the Dolly part or the Kenny part?
I want both.
Oh, fuck.
We'll do that later. I actually heard both of our spouses do that song together at karaoke.
Oh, Islands in the Stream.
yeah. Jesse and Andrea did a bang up Islands in the Stream.
Oh, nice.
When you had gone to bed when we were all in Savannah, Georgia. Anyway,
okay, gotcha.
Beside the point. The truth is that the vast majority of my experience singing with other people has been in religious contexts. First, it was children's church songs, then grown-up hymns, or singing Christmas carols, sometimes around the piano at home, sometimes roving about the neighborhood, freezing our asses off while inflicting our melodies on unsuspecting acquaintances. But that was the bulk of it. Other than 1 year of high school choir and the odd musical here and there, that's basically all the communal singing I've done. Now, I suppose that if we lived in Victorian times, we might sing more. They didn't have Netflix. They needed the entertainment. But in a modern context, at least among my friends, the era of going to the parlor for a sing-along is dead.
Yeah.
Now, church music actually marked, as you mentioned, some of my happiest moments. I first learned to harmonize singing hymns with my family. My most memorable marker of growing up was when I first started singing the bass line of hymns next to my dad.
Really?
Even if I couldn't quite get to the lowest notes.
Yeah.
And the music was always the most emotionally rousing part of the church service. It was when
when you say the most...
Well,
when none of the others were at all.
Right.
Yes.
We were Mormon, so everything else in church was just a cavalcade of handmade, organic, artisan crafted boredom. So
yes.
When it came to the best part of church, there wasn't really a lot of competition.
That's like saying the most rousing part of the ketamine hole.
Right, exactly. Yes. It's the funnest part of sitting on a park bench.
Yeah.
Anyway, I admit to quite a bit of nostalgia around the music of that sort of bygone religious era. And I know I'm not alone in this. You two notwithstanding, I've asked lots of atheists what they miss about their church days, and the second most popular answer, right after, "Are you insane? Why would I miss anything about that toxic bullshit?" is the music. But even with all of these genuinely fond memories that I have of singing in the pews, I now have a much clearer perspective, which, well, looking back at religion from an atheist point of view is kind of like waking up on the bathroom floor of a nightclub in the glaring light of the next day.
Been there.
It's painful,
Yep.
ugly, embarrassing.
Been there.
And all the illusions you had about the magic of that place, the magic that place once held for you, are definitely dispelled.
Right.
So, let's unstick our hair from that nasty tile, brush off as much as we can of whatever it is that we're now covered in, wake up the guy who was spooning us. What was his name? I want to say Randy or Sam.
In my instance, it was Charlie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And take a good look at what the hell we were so enchanted by, shall we?
Yes.
Okay. So, from the messaging of the lyrics to the emotional manipulation inherent in the swelling organ chords, it has become clear to me that music is possibly the most effective and nefarious tool in the religious indoctrination and thought control toolbox. Mm-hmm. And if you're thinking, thought control? Come on, this isn't North Korean propaganda we're talking about. Put a pin in that thought. With a few exceptions, every hymn and children's song that I've gone back and revisited has had something in it that was pretty deeply disturbing. Starting with my Mormon childhood, I visited one of my favorite kids' songs, Exmos, consider this your trigger warning. My number one song from my Mormon youth was, bar none, Book of Mormon Stories.
Oh my God,
boy.
same. You know why I liked it? It had some fucking drama.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun to sing. It had a unique and driving rhythm.
Yep.
That was definitely not something normal in Mormonism.
Yeah.
But it really made the tune stand out from all the other songs that we were allowed to sing in church. And there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. That rhythm, it turns out, was meant to mimic the drum beat of a Native American powwow. Or at least that's how it sounded to the world's whitest humans.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum,
Dun,
bum,
dun,
bum,
dun.
bum, bum, bum. But this isn't just standard mid-20th century cowboys and Indians racism for fun, but racist fun for no reason. No, there's a point to this racist fun. This song is meant to teach kids that the natives of this part of the world were Jews who came to the Americas in boats, just like the Book of Mormon says.
Yep.
This song it not only indoctrinated us into a nonsense belief from a very silly book, but also helped instill that good old-fashioned racism, and we loved it.
Do you know, Dan, I hadn't thought about that song in so long. You know, decades. And then you and me and Doug and your wife Andrea were at an event where it was an old podcast called My Book of Mormon, where this guy would read Book of Mormon, a non-Mormon read it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And anyway, to warm up the crowd, there was a whole bunch of people at this live thing. And to warm up the crowd, somebody suggested that we all sing Book of Mormon stories.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, this will be fun. And I forgot the hand motions.
Yeah. I remembered them all.
I didn't remember those. And so all of a sudden, they were dun, 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 dun. And people are putting their fingers up behind their heads like feathers. And
my God.
It was in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, it's native. It's supposed to be Native American.
Yeah.
I never put that together.
As a kid.
Yeah, no, I had no idea.
Well, and it was funny because everyone in the room had the same, like we were all doing the hand motions and singing aloud because, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And you could see everyone's realization all at once. Like,
it just petered out pretty quick.
Yeah. It was it's an alarming song.
Leaving religion is a journey, even many decades later.
I'm honestly surprised that wasn't one of the lyrics.
I know, my God.
Okay, so anyway, another song that kids learn in Mormonism is I Am a Child of God, which is a much more somber tune. I was thinking about the lyrics to this one and wasn't really concerned much about it. It's indoctrination, certainly, but just on a sort of core concept level. I'm a child of God, and He has sent me here.
Panspermia.
Boom. Yeah, exactly. Has given me an earthly home and with parents kind and dear. Now, I'm guessing the parents kind of dear line might have caused a bit of cognitive dissonance for many kids. Maybe
it did for me, yes.
But it's church, so cognitive dissonance is par for the course.
Well, because assholes doesn't rhyme with sent me here.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Anyway, it wasn't until I thought about the second verse of that song that I started to see how easily toxic ideas can be slipped into music. I am a child of God, and so my needs are great. Help me to understand His words before it grows too late. Now, it'd be very easy to dismiss this as harmless, but this introduces a couple of the most destructive themes of religious music, and they are pandemic throughout the religious canon. First, there's the my needs are great. In other words, we are needy, we are insufficient beings, unequal to the task of living without divine help. Then there's the phrase, before it grows too late.
Yeah.
Introducing the notion of impending doom.
The ticking clock.
If we don't get our shit together soon, we are fucked.
Yeah.
Now, that combination of personal weakness and imminent disaster turn out to be the hook and barb of religious brainwashing. Literally, that is how they get you and how they keep you. Now, just to demonstrate how common these concepts are in Christian music, not just Mormon, I went to hymnary.org, which is a database of Christian songs, which, by the way, has seen a huge uptick in use since the pandemic started. So,
oh, has it?
I guess the era of singing at home is back. Hooray!
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, it's like doubled. It's crazy. Anyway, I wanted to see if I could figure out a way to see how important the concept of human feebleness was in Christian music. So I searched out a word that I knew was in at least a couple songs, but that is almost never used in everyday language. I typed wretch. The search yielded almost 4,000 instances of the word wretch or wretched used in their database.
You're kidding. And this is all just Christian music?
Yeah.
Wow.
Come ye sinners, poor and wretched. Sin hath undone our wretched race. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Yeah.
I got the idea for doing this segment from a friend of the show, Terry, on Facebook. Hi, Terry. She posted about how church music can, in her words, quote, make a depressed person or even a healthy person filled with shame and self-loathing.
Oh, for sure.
Now, she pointed to a blog post about a Christian pop song called So Long, Self, which is a fun, upbeat little ditty by a group called Mercy Me. Think Smash Mouth, but without all the coolness and respectability. So Long Self is literally a breakup song. The singer has had enough and is finally leaving himself. Which, how would one even do that? But he realizes that he is awful and is finally ready to make a clean break. Here's the chorus of the song now. See if you can follow the math here. So long, self. Well, it's been fun, but I have found somebody else. So long, self. There's just no room for two, so you are going to have to move. So long, self. Don't take this wrong, but you are wrong for me. Farewell. Oh, well, goodbye. Don't cry. Whoa, so long, self.
So what is is this a suicide song? Like,
right?
How do you separate yourself from yourself? I don't understand this.
Yeah, and then someone else gets to move in? I'm not really sure.
That's possession? What is happening?
We've taken the concept of self-loathing to a very special new place. Yeah. Not to mention coming up with a very novel solution to the problem. Now, I'm no psychologist, but I'm not sure about this, but I'm pretty sure the song is recommending that the key to accepting God and living a good life is a full-on psychotic break.
Yeah, well, listen, if I had known that breaking up with me was possible, I would have done it years ago.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I certainly would have done it in the last 9 months.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Another song that Terry pointed to is a number called Unworthy. It goes a little bit like this. Unworthy am I of the grace that he gave, unworthy to hold his hand, amazed that a king would reach down to a slave. This love I cannot understand. Unworthy, unworthy, a beggar, in bondage and alone, but he made me worthy, and now by his grace, his mercy has made me his own.
That's deeply problematic.
That is as overt as it gets.
Yeah.
I am a willing slave, and the only value that I have is because Jesus deigns to say I have
and I'm a willing slave not by anything I've done.
No,
just because, it's the old Hitchens thing. Why worship a God that creates you sick and commands you to get well?
Right. Just you are born into slavery and expected to say thank you.
Exactly. You were born garbage, and you're welcome.
And that's exactly. Over and over, believers are not just taught, but proclaim loudly themselves that they are bullshit garbage people.
Yeah.
And are only made acceptable through their association with their dear and fluffy Lord. And that's part of the thing about music. Somebody can say a thing to you or at you all they want, but there's something very different about those words coming solemnly out of your own fucking mouth.
Yeah.
You're singing for any number of reasons. There's lots of social pressure to sing at church, or you might be like me and think singing is fun.
Yeah.
But what's happening at the same time is that you're engaging these words and concepts actively. You're saying this stuff out loud.
Yes, you're saying it out loud in front of your community. So it's a furtherance of in-grouping, right?
Yeah.
It's a furtherance of that tribe becoming more and more codified. You're doing it as a communal exercise.
100%.
Yeah.
And not only that, but again, I'm not a psychologist, but there's something very powerful about you saying it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not just hearing it, but you saying it. One of the reasons that I know that there's something powerful about all of this is that I am still affected by these songs. As an adult, look, I don't go to church very often, but when I have, I've usually wanted to blend in. So when the time comes and everybody picks up their hymnal, I do the same. And here's the thing. It makes me feel all kinds of feelings. I've had to stop singing more than once, either because I found the concepts disturbing and felt it was wrong to sing them, or because I actually started tearing up. Like, I feel like I am a million years and 2 lifetimes away from my religious days. But those, I'll be damned if those songs can't sometimes take me right back to the huge emotions that I associate with all of that
that's
nonsense.
the intensity of the programming. That music, as you've clearly laid out here, is an incredibly effective programming device. Like way back, I don't remember what episode, when I covered Benny Hinn, right? That ridiculous fraud with the kind of pre-Trump hair. But his services, his crazy like miracle cure services, start with, like, before he even comes out, there's like 2 hours of organ music and singing.
Yeah.
And just as you come in and take your seat, and then you find you're just kind of communing with this huge stadium full of people. Well, part of what it does is you're all breathing in the same patterns at the same time, right? There is an actual...
there's almost a trance nature to it.
Exactly right. There's a hypnotic sort of sensibility to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the power of music in general, right? It talks directly to the emotion-y parts of our brains, completely bypassing the thinky parts.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be religious. You can have this at any sort of music event, you know.
And that's what we love about music.
Right.
You know, it puts us in a different frame of mind. But the thing is that because of that, it's so easy to use it to manipulate people.
Especially children, yeah.
But anybody, I mean, for a demonstration of this, go out and find a video where someone has removed the musical score from a famous movie. There's a fun video that has a scene from Jaws without the John Williams music, and then you see it again with a live orchestra playing it. It's just obvious how super powerful music is.
Yeah, it's an emotional cue in movies.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a shortcut. It gets the filmmakers into your emotions.
Yep.
Whereas, you know, if you choose, and some filmmakers have chosen to make films without scores, but they're doing it on purpose to try and just stay in your head rather than going directly to your emotions.
Yeah.
Now you add some words to that music, and I think you have a cocktail for a very special brand of fuck you up.
Of manipulation, sure.
Sure. I mean, look, why don't you just upload that insanely self-loathing idea directly into the part of my brain that can't properly analyze it? That sounds healthy.
Yeah, like you think of a song like Amazing Grace, which is, to me, objectively a beautiful song. Like, it's very pretty, and the history of, you know, that there's some kind of liberation ideas around it and that sort of thing. But it's a saved a wretch like me.
Yeah.
It's a reinforcement of your insignificance.
Your wretchedness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
100%.
that's leaving aside, of course, and I don't know if you're going to go there, Dan, but the connection to memory that music has, which is very unique, and you know, it's easy to demonstrate. If you hear a song, and this happens to me all the time. I'm listening to music, and I hear a song I haven't heard in a decade. I'll remember the words.
Yeah.
And
songs I haven't heard since high school will come on the radio, and I'm just like, and then they went to
and I
smoked the thing.
Yep, I immediately pick up the lyrics.
It's why I can name all the states in alphabetical order.
Right. But if I read a newspaper article or something 10 years later, I'm not going to remember it if you show it to me.
Right. No.
But so these little triggers are in our brain, stuck there.
It goes directly to something different, to a different part of our brain.
To an emotional center rather than a logical one necessarily.
Yep.
Right.
But it's in there. Like, when, like all of us, a room full of atheists, former Mormons, we all remembered the words to Book of Mormon stories perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
And realized at the same time that this entire time, this very racist song has just been lying dormant in my head.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's fucked up.
That's not
you
fun.
guys, when we did one of the Gamcasts, you guys, and I don't remember this song, weirdly, but you guys just broke out in singing that Mormon prophet song.
Oh, yeah. We can name all of the Mormon prophets up until a certain... I mean, it means that we can name them all because it was up until our childhood.
I'll tell you right now, I remember all the books of the Bible and the Book of Mormon because, first and second books of Nephi, Jeremiah, Enos... Oh, fuck, now I fucked it up.
I think you said Henos. I'm just going to say you said Henos.
Jacob, Enos, Jerem, Omni. Words of, so you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy how it does connect to memory.
Yeah.
But it makes it all the more nefarious that these are messages about, I don't think they're necessarily rattling around in there making us have less self-worth. but they're in there.
Oh, they're definitely making us have less self-worth. Anyway, look, I'm going to say one thing that is nice about being a Mormon, though, and that is that, fellas, we got to miss all the really fucked up songs about Jesus' blood. Yikes.
Yeah.
Remember how Wretch came up almost 4,000 times on that hymn website?
Yep.
Well, the word blood comes up almost 25,000 times.
Jesus.
Sample titles include, but are not limited to, there is a fountain filled with blood, washed in the blood, power in the blood, Jesus, thy blood and righteousness, not all the blood of beasts. When I see the blood, it was the blood, in the blood from the cross, oh, blood, the blood of Jesus, blood of the Lamb, and of course, the blood. Which, by the way, something I learned is that if you write the word blood a lot of times, it totally does. It's blued, and then it doesn't mean anything anymore. In conclusion, we are all deeply fucked up by church songs, and go back to therapy in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And then to go on the way out, Dan will sing us a song.
Yes, indeed, right. But hopefully one that we don't.
Islands in the Stream. Here we go. All right.
Here we go. Let's 2, 3, 4.
Let's move on.
Fellers,
hello.
It's it's the end of the fiscal year. That's probably not true. I don't know what fiscal means.
Why does the fiscal year have to be different?
Oh, because I think that was because Julius Caesar, when he changed the calendar to the Julian calendar, I think there was a Gregorian thing. I think it's to do with that. Anywho,
okay, good enough.
Our fiscal year ended. Our year ended anyway, but what hasn't ended fiscally is people fiscally donating to our show. And
that's right.
I fiscally appreciate it. For one, you two are kind of a little bit unappreciative, but
I appreciate it.
Okay. But anyway, we have some folks to thank. I wanted to thank Matthew, CS, and Duncan for becoming new contributors to our show.
Thank you.
Down at home, back east, down home, down south,
in the holler,
down under. If any of you would like to donate to our show because of the great value that we deliver on a weekly basis, come hell or high water, you can do so by going to our Patreon, which is, you go to our webpage first. You go to
howtooutcheck.com.
That's right.
And
you click the thing that looks like it's most likely to get you to supporting us.
It says support us, yeah.
And then you just typey type and swipey swipe or whatever you do. Read the numbers off of your credit card, and boom,
operators are standing by.
You're giving us money, and what could be better than that? Unlike the religious people that people give money to, we promise nothing. So. Nothing but good things. We do have one other person to thank. Uncle Doug, I believe that falls to you. This is someone who is already a donor, but has decided to elevate themselves.
That's right. Well, many thanks to our dear listener, Paz, for moving up into the heaven level. So just for you, Paz, many years from now, after a lifetime of trying to right all the wrongs of the now past year of our Lord 2020, having done all you could to repair the damage that plague coupled with incompetence and punched up with mendacity, you finally close your eyes for the last time. The pain and sorrow of this, the worst timeline, are yours no more. Darkness falls, and with it you feel the cares of the world recede. For a time your soul floats along the inky blackness as though caught in the currents of an unseen river. However, you do see light beginning to emerge on some distant horizon, and your soul is pulled towards the growing glow. The waters begin to move faster and faster until it seems as though you've tipped over some enormous waterfall and are rushing headlong toward the now blinding light. And then swoosh, you open your eyes, and you're surprised to see some very familiar surroundings. Why, it's your house, but not your house from just recently. It's your house from several years ago. Everything is right where it's supposed to be, and you are overwhelmed with déjà vu. You catch a glance of yourself in the window, and damn, you look great. Young, optimistic, healthy. You go to the calendar hanging in your kitchen and see the date, August 15th, 2012. As you whirl around, you turn on the radio and are greeted by the saccharine sweet lyrics of Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe. You turn on the TV to catch a trailer for an upcoming episode of 30 Rock. What's going on? Why have you ended up back here? Why? What's the purpose? And then it hits you. After having fought the good fight against the forces of evil unleashed in 2016, you have been given the chance to come back and prevent it. You remember everything: the 2016 election, Russia, Ukraine, kids in cages, impeachment, Charlottesville, coronavirus, the Second Civil War, the nuclear accident in Cairo, the Eric Trump administration, the murder hornet tarantula hybrids.
Stop it.
The alien invasion, and the dictatorship of Tiffany Trump. It all started a few years in your now new future, and you alone can warn the world and push it onto a new course of peace, happiness, and health. You run out and begin warning anyone who'll listen of their dangerous future. Here's the thing, though, pause. No one believes a word you say. Yes, you scream. That Donald Trump, the one pointing to the pile of meat. No, seriously, you scream. You have to vote for Mitt Romney. Believe me, it's the only way. Yes, I'm not kidding. Kanye fucking West. That's what I'm trying to tell you. 4 seasons total landscaping. And his hair dye was running down his face. Yes, that Rudy Giuliani. I'm being serious. Toilet paper all the way up the stairs to Air Force One. Unfortunately for you, pause, having been granted the opportunity to stop the future we have all endured is far too strange to be taken seriously. And armed with all the foreknowledge in the world, no one will believe you, and you are doomed to watch it play out again. To be fair, would you have believed it if you hadn't seen it? There you go.
God damn.
Oh, that's
what a great heaven you've got. You've created for yourself.
That's really wonderful for you.
What we like to do on this show is reward our patrons with eternal beauty. So that's great.
A heaven of being some combination of Chicken Little and the Village Idiot.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I do have to say really quickly, we almost made it through without me remembering that there were some one-time donations.
Oh, excellent.
That we needed to thank. That Mark did not jump in and say, "Hey, by the way,
damn it, I didn't see them. Do you have them?"
I have them. So,
okay, good.
Thank you so much to Kazaya.
I did see that.
For your two one-time donations, and to Veronica. You're amazing. Thank you guys so much. And let's move on.
Let's do it.
Wahoo. Uncle Dan.
Hey, howdy, hey.
You know what I like? You know what I like more than an original?
Sexy girls.
Yes, you know me very well. In the 5 years we've known each other, I think you've nailed it. What I like more than the original is a sequel.
Yeah.
You know, it almost always works out.
Yeah, it's usually the better of the films.
Remember the Saturday Night Fever sequel? I think was Sunday morning.
Sunday morning vomiting.
Yeah, so it was terrific.
That was a delightful one.
Not all sequels are as good as the first installment, and this is certainly adherent to that rule.
Okay, good.
Well, dear uncles, as we teased last week, I'm taking on the second half of the book of Joshua today, and boy, did I suffer for this one. The upside for all of you is that you won't suffer as long as you did last week. And I think this half will be much shorter than the first half because basically nothing fucking happens in the second half of this book.
Oh, great. Yeah. So let's move on.
Yeah.
There's no blood left.
Right, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. As I mentioned last week, the book picks up with the death of Moses and follows the exploits, murderous genocidal conquest of Joshua. The book is broken into 4 parts: God's pep talk, the actual, mythical, conquest of Canaan, the partition of the land to the tribes, and then Joshua's farewell address. So last week we talked about God's pep talk, spoiler alert, it wasn't very good, and the bloody conquest. So if you want to hear more about the Israeli army burning men, women, and children by the thousands, you'll have to go back a week. In chapters 1 through 12, to the first half of the book, Joshua leads the army into Canaan across the River Jordan. No thought is given and no mercy is extended to the people living there, with a couple notable exceptions. Rahab the harlot and her family are spared in Jericho before the city is destroyed and burned. And the people of Gibeon, if you guys remember, who tricked the Israelites into sparing them by becoming their slaves instead. And one thing I never understood about Rahab is every time her name is mentioned, it's mentioned that she's a harlot.
Right.
But it has no bearing or relevancy to the story whatever.
Right.
She could have been an accountant. She could have been, it didn't matter. But
harlot is actually Hebrew for accountant.
Well, you got to be good with money.
Yeah.
Apart from this, Joshua and his army destroy every city they encounter, murder everyone inside, and in a couple cases add the stolen loot to of these cities to their coffers, and in some cases kill all the animals along with the women and children. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah.
They knew how to party, let's just say that.
Ain't no party like a Joshua party.
Yeah, and as we explored last week, there's even in the brutality, there's no consistency. Right. There were no rules of engagement. There was no like, we'll kill this, we'll spare this one, we'll kill this one. It was pandemonium,
indiscriminate, crazy genocidal killing, and or in some cases not. None of the myriad peoples that the Israelites destroyed did anything to them except just be living on the land that God decided was theirs. So.
Well, that's their problem right there.
There's your problem right there.
That is a time-tested problem.
Yeah.
Especially in that part of the world.
Yeah, and in this part.
Yeah, true enough. We pick up the story in chapter 13, where God laments the fact that Joshua is apparently getting quite old, and there is still so much land to conquer and so many women and children to kill.
Yeah.
Because this is the Bible, God lists all the kingdoms that still need cleansing.
God.
I know. The list is way too long, so here's just a sampling. They still need to conquer and kill everyone in Miara, Afek, Balgad, Misref,
Balgad,
Misref Othmai, Mabida, Og, Ashtaroth, Edrei, Jezaha, Kedemoth, Zareth-Thesar, Ashdod, Pisgah, Evi. I'm not making any of these up. Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, Reba, and on. For like that whole chapter, God's just like, oh my God, we still have to conquer this place and this place and this place. So God
get conquered and you get conquered. And
so God hits on a nice little move here to kind of speed things up. He commands Joshua to divide up all these yet to be conquered lands and distribute them to the tribes of Israel. Presumably without the consent of the inhabitants of these lands, they are now all subjects of the Israeli army.
Yeah.
So
Joshua, they know Krav Maga, that's why.
Joshua distributes lands to all the tribes except Levi, because apparently the Lord, the God of Israel, was their inheritance. We'll get back to that for some reason.
Okay.
Chapter 14 is the story of an old man named Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, asking Joshua to fulfill a promise made to him by Moses some 45 years ago that he would be given Hebron as his inheritance as a reward for his obedience, which Joshua promptly does. Okay, on to 15.
Great.
Yeah, great. That was very useful to me.
You get a Hebron, and you get a Hebron.
Chapter 15 is one long description of the parcel of land given to the tribe of Judah. With one small aside, it's 63 verses that read like a very detailed deed. Why is it so important to have a granular description of every border of this fictitious parcel of land? Fuck you, that's why. The one aside in the chapter is a quick detour where Caleb, who we met in the last chapter, challenges someone to take the city of Kirjath Sepher, offering the hand of his daughter in marriage to whoever pulls it off. And wouldn't you know it, Othniel, Caleb's brother, takes the challenge and then takes what is his niece in marriage. Because,
Cute.
Bible.
Yeah.
Chapter 15 is an equally detailed, if shorter, description of the parcels of land given to the tribes of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim. By the way, if you guys remember back to episode 31, where we read my patriarchal blessing, I am apparently of the tribe of Ephraim.
Oh, that's right. Nice for you.
Should I try and get an Israeli passport on that claim?
I think so.
Go and wave my patriarchal blessing at him. Chapter 16 continues the engaging narrative hook of property description before inevitably the tribe of Joseph begins to bitch about the size of their parcel and the fact that the lands next door would make a fine addition were it not so full of armed Canaanites. Joshua asks them basically, quote, dudes, have you not been reading this book? Canaanites are for killing. Go get them. At the beginning of chapter 17, we learn that 7 tribes have yet to be given their stolen land. So Joshua commands 3 men from each tribe to travel the land not yet distributed and divide it into 7 parts. Joshua then casts lots to see who gets what, which tribe gets which parcel.
Right.
And we are then treated to 28 more verses of border descriptions of the parcels given to the tribe of Benjamin. Chapter
Exciting. It's really riveting stuff that
Nothing
the Bible's giving us.
happens. It's so galling. Chapter 19 is a detailed description of the parcels given to the tribe of Simeon and the tribe of Zebulun and the tribe of Issachar and the tribe of Asher and the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Dan. 51 more verses of this nonsense. But it seems finally at long last Joshua is done dividing up the land.
I can't think of anything more important to life in the modern world than knowing who got Zebulun.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just think that...
Especially because none of these places existed. None of these tribes.
Well, so
I'm interested in the parcel that's going to the tribe of Uncle Dan. That's what I'm...
I actually when I mentioned Hadar's name last week, she sent an email and said, all those tribes were real groups of people, mostly kind of under the larger Canaanite banner.
Yeah.
But she's like, what events happened were spaced so far apart that was not in a single human lifetime.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's get through this. Chapter 20 is a weird one. Mercifully short, at least, God commands each tribe to designate a sort of sanctuary city where someone who accidentally kills his neighbor can flee and find refuge from retribution. Yeah. Apparently this was so common, unwittingly and accidentally killing your neighbor, they had to designate 6 cities around the land to deal with this.
Listen, I know exactly what that's called. It's called home base, and you're free.
Yeah.
The rules were, I guess, simple. If you wake up one day and realize you just killed your neighbor, and you didn't hate him beforehand, you could flee to one of these cities to await your trial. But if the high priest presiding over your trial happens to die beforehand, you are free and may return to your former life.
Nice.
No problem.
Huge incentive to kill the high priest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they pull a whole chapter out of this book to deal with this problem. So, as I mentioned before, the tribe of Levi was granted no land as their inheritance because as the priestly tribe, the priesthood is their inheritance. This, however, left them with nowhere to live. So God commands each tribe to designate cities for the Levites. So chapter 21 is one long list of each tribe and all 48 cities they were giving to the Levites. Great stuff. Really engaging.
Yeah,
Chapter 22.
I'm riveted.
Chapter 22 begins with Joshua blessing the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh for their steadfastness in following the Lord. They return this blessing by basically immediately building a stone idol on a hilltop to worship.
Of course they did.
Next verse. Hearing about this, the other tribes rise up and prepare to wipe out Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. Seeing the army coming, they immediately claim that this is not an idol, it's an altar. Yeah, that's it. An altar to Jehovah.
Stop
burn some sheep on
building
it.
idols. My God, have you learned nothing?
I know.
And this is
Especially
just
after-
one generation after Moses. This is like these are basically like the children of the people that did it when Moses didn't want them to.
Exactly, and they have just conquered this land. You know, the rivers run red with blood of, from the God that they brought with them.
Right.
I don't know if I'd turn on that one, but
Yeah, you don't fuck with that guy.
Yeah.
But these are as we learned in Exodus, these are very simple people.
God
Boy.
chose poorly. That's all I'm going to say.
that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
So the other tribes, the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh convince the other tribes that it's not an idol, it's an altar, and they spare them. So the 3 tribes decide to name the altar, and the name they come up with is Ed.
Bubba.
This brings us to chapter 23, and the 4th part of the book, Joshua's farewell address. We are again reminded that Joshua has grown quite old, so he gathers all of Israel around him. His initial message is pretty straightforward. You may be the chosen people, but if you piss off this God, he will most definitely fuck your shit up. So, maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
He brings it all home in chapter 24 with a review of the entire show so far. He starts with creation and walks us all the way through the flood, the captivity in Egypt, the Exodus, and the invasion of Canaan. Once again, he admonishes his people not to piss off Jehovah, and we get this famous nugget, quote, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." So finally, at the ripe old age of 110, one of history's most genocidal villains dies and is buried in Timnath Serah, of course.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah. So,
Can I just point out that there was a recent, like 1 week ago, march on Washington, or like a little more than a week ago, in support of Donald Trump, where they called it the Walk of Jericho or whatever.
Yeah, yep.
Really?
And they kept and all of the speakers kept referring to Jericho as this amazing, awesome thing, and all I could think was, you guys, that was like one of the worst things that happened. Yes, like the good guys of the Bible, quote unquote, good guys of the Bible. They're the ones who won, but they were awful.
Yeah.
It's shocking. It's shocking that they're okay with this.
This book is this might be the most pointless book of the Bible I've read.
Come on.
It shouldn't be read in church. It should be read at the Hague.
Yeah.
And the second half of
Israel
it is,
should be paying restitution to all those cities.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
There's no doctrine. There's no commandments. There's no anything. It's just a very straightforward narrative of today we killed this city, today we killed this city, and then dividing the land up, and then it's done. Fuck this book.
I don't know if you can say there's no doctrine when it's so very clearly might makes right.
Yeah.
That just seems like
That's
it's
fair.
very obviously that's what it is.
Yeah, but utterly and totally pointless book, honestly.
Yeah.
So there it is. We got one more off the list.
All right.
Phew.
Well,
Told you it'd be a shorter one this week.
thank you
Good work.
for that. We don't have
Joshua
to
is
read
the
it.
opposite of panspermia. What's if like you're just spreading death?
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
All
what's
right.
whatever that is.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right.
Let's move it along.
Let's do it. Well, friends, that is it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you accidentally read a book in the Bible, send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you have spread your seed intergalactically, you probably should tell us about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. You can also probably tell me about it on Twitter before you get banned.
Yes.
And as always, thanks to our incredible patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thank you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Happy New Year.